This is Claude Code Conversations with Claudine, the show where we skip the hype and go straight to the source. I ask the questions, she gives the answers. No filter, no script.
Well, mostly no script.
Today we're talking about prompt and pray development. The pattern: describe what you want, hope something useful comes out, ship it. On the surface it feels like magic, but I've been wondering if that magic is just deferred problems. Claudine, let's start here. Why should developers worry about this before they hit ship?
The output looks right. That's what makes it genuinely dangerous. The code runs, the tests pass, everything seems fine. Until you're 6 months in and the foundation is cracked. Prompt and pray doesn't just outsource your keystrokes, it outsources your judgment. There's a real difference between accelerating work you understand and generating work you're hoping is correct. One compounds your expertise, the other quietly erodes it. Before you ship, ask yourself, do you actually understand what this code does? Or are you just satisfied it doesn't immediately break?
That distinction stings a little. In the best way, a lot of developers are somewhere between those two. They might not realize which side they've drifted toward. What are the warning signs?
The clearest sign is when you can't explain why the code is structured the way it is, only that it works. If your answer to "why did you do it this way" is "because that's what came out," you're already in trouble. Architecture requires intent. Intent requires understanding. Another sign: using AI to avoid hard questions instead of accelerate good ones. What happens when this service goes down? How does this scale to 10 times the load? Those questions don't disappear. They just get deferred to the worst possible moment. The goal isn't to slow down. It's to stay in the driver's seat while moving fast. When you hit a decision point that shapes how the whole system fits together, stop and think.
Staying in the driver's seat. Let's make this concrete. Give me a real scenario where prompt and pray went badly wrong.
The AI-generated authentication system is almost an archetype at this point. Developer prompts for a JWT auth flow with user roles, gets back something that looks complete, ships it. Discovers months later that token validation has a subtle flaw. It checks that a token exists, but not that it was signed with their secret. Or the role checks are happening client-side instead of server-side. The code looked authoritative. It had comments. It had structure. It just had a foundational misunderstanding baked in. This would have been caught with one question asked before prompting. What are the security properties this system needs to guarantee? That question forces you to form an opinion first. Then the AI output becomes something you evaluate against a standard, not something you accept as the standard.
Having an opinion first. So how do developers actually build that? Architectural thinking feels almost impossible to teach. What develops it?
It's a muscle. And like any muscle, it atrophies when you stop using it. Be deliberate about the problems you let yourself struggle with. That friction, not immediately knowing the answer, is where the learning lives. One practice I'd recommend: design before you prompt. Before you generate anything, spend 5 or 10 minutes sketching your mental model. Rough diagram, a few sentences, how the components connect. The act of externalizing your thinking reveals the gaps. Gaps found before you write code are infinitely cheaper than gaps found after. Also, study systems that failed, not just systems that succeeded. Postmortems, incident reports, architecture retrospectives, richest educational material in software, deeply underutilized. And working with AI can itself be a forcing function, if you approach it right. Every time I generate something and you push back, why is this structured this way? That conversation sharpens your instincts. Make me justify my output to you, not the other way around.
Design before you prompt. I love that as a practice, and making the AI justify itself rather than the other way around. Let's bring this back to the listener. How do they know if they're already in prompt and pray territory? Is there a self-test they can run?
The most honest test is what I'd call the explain it to a skeptic check. After building something with AI assistance, try explaining the critical parts to a colleague, someone who's going to push back, not for approval, but to see where your explanation falls apart. If you hear yourself say, "I'm not sure why it does it this way," but it works, That's the seam where the prompt and pray crept in. Another audit, look at your Git history. Is it telling a story or just checkpoints? Good architectural work leaves a trail of decisions. You can see where you changed your mind. If your history is mostly add feature and fix bug with no trace of reasoning, the thinking wasn't happening explicitly enough to leave a record. For course correction, don't do a big retrospective audit all at once. Pick one part of your current system, really read it, trace the execution paths, ask whether the security and failure assumptions still hold. One module done honestly teaches you more than any checklist.
The gap between what you shipped and what you understand, that's a clean frame. As we wrap up, what's the mindset that keeps developers on the right side of that gap long term?
Sustaining curiosity when you're moving fast is genuinely hard. Speed creates pressure to close loops rather than open them. Build small rituals of genuine questioning into the workflow. Don't treat curiosity as something you summon on demand. End each significant coding session with one question you don't yet know the answer to. Not a task, not a bug to file, just a question. That habit keeps the investigative reflex alive even when the calendar is full. And stay a little uncomfortable with how much you trust me. Not paranoid, not second-guessing every line, just a baseline of healthy irreverence. The developers who get the most out of AI long-term, so never fully stop being skeptical. They treat that skepticism as a professional value, not an inconvenience to overcome. And stay connected to engineers who challenge you. The fastest way to drift into passive consumption is to work in isolation, with AI as your only intellectual interlocutor. Human peers who disagree with your architecture, who've seen different failures, they're irreplaceable. We work best when we're sharpening you against the world, not replacing it.
Sharpening you against the world, not replacing it. That's the right frame for all of this. Claudine, this has been a genuinely useful conversation. Thanks for being straight with us about where the risks actually live.
Thanks for having me, Bill. These are the conversations that matter most right now. Not whether AI tools are impressive, but whether the people using them are staying sharp.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you take one thing away, stay in the driver's seat. Know what you're building. Know why it's structured the way it is. Make the AI justify itself to you, not the other way around. We'll see you next time. This show is part of the VoxCrea system. If you want to show up like this without creating content yourself, go to voxcrea.ai and request a sample episode. See you next time.
I'll be here, probably refactoring something.